The third angel's message is one of condemnation. The third angel's message is of condemnation. Look back at verses 9 and 11. And another angel, a third, followed them, saying with a loud voice, if anyone worships the beast and its image and receives a mark on his forehead or on his hand, he will also drink the wine of God's wrath, poured full strength in the cup of his anger, and he will be tormented with fire and sulphur in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever, and they have no rest. Day or night, these worshipers of the beast and its image, and whoever receives the mark of his name. The third angel brings a word of condemnation to all who worship the beast and his image. This beast is specifically the false prophet from Revelation 13, who demands and forces allegiance to the Antichrist. All who choose to worship the beast, they will receive judgment from God, but they will also receive condemnation. All who choose to worship the beast, who demands and forces allegiance to the Antichrist. But it's also all who receive its mark. So if you're here this morning, because Pastor Sammy told you last week that I would answer every single question that you had as to what the mark of the beast is, I would love to stand here this morning and tell you that Pastor Sammy was having a difficult time interpreting what the mark of the beast is, so he asked me to help him out a little bit. I'd love to tell you that. But if you're here this morning and you're grading the student pastor's sermon based on what this mark of the beast is, I'm unfortunately here to tell you I'm about to fail your exam. Because the reality is we don't exactly know what this mark of the beast is. We don't really know. But we do know that it's a clear mark of rebellion against God, whatever that mark is. Just as Pastor Sammy told us last week, we don't know exactly what it is, but true Christians will know what it is with discernment when it comes. Regardless of what it is, we will know with discernment what it is when it comes. But to all who receive this mark of the beast on his forehead and on his hand, God's wrath will be poured out against him. They'll receive God's judgment. And this refers to, it says, the full strength of God's wrath. So an ancient practice during this time, an ancient practice was to pour water into wine to dilute the strength of the drink. It was a common ancient practice during that day. When it says that they who receive the mark of the beast and its image and choose to worship this beast, when it says that those people will receive the full strength of God's wrath, it's referring to that God's final judgment towards those who choose to worship the beast will receive the full, undiluted wrath of God. It will not be watered down. It's the full expression of God's holy anger against sin, against all who choose to worship the beast and his image. And the condemnation that they receive is eternity in hell forever. It says they will receive the punishment with fire and sulphur. The smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever. They have no rest from their suffering. If they would be annihilated in 1,000 years, that would be enough hope for them. But there's no hope in hell. There is no escaping hell. There is no going from hell to heaven. There's no second chance in hell. It is forever and ever. Their torment is ongoing. It is eternal. They have no rest from their suffering. This is not a pretty picture. This is not rosy and pretty all the time. This is the reality of God's holy anger against sin. And friends, this is the reason why we share the gospel, because the eternal souls of people are at stake. It's the very reason why we do Who's Your One? It's the very reason that motivates us to do Everyone Hears. It's the very purpose of why we go to Uganda and to Kenya. It's the reason why we have a desire to plant a church in Chicago. But it's also the reason why we go to our coworkers and our neighbors who don't know Jesus, because their eternal souls are at stake. Charles Spurgeon was a 19th century Baptist preacher, and this is what he has to say about the urgency of this. He says, if sinners be condemned, at least let them leap to hell over our dead bodies. And if they perish, let them perish with our arms wrapped about their knees, imploring them to stay. If hell must be filled, let it be filled in the teeth of our efforts, and let not one go unwarned and unprayed for. This is the reason why we go to the nations. It's the reason why we go to our workplaces. It's the reason why we go across the street and next door, because the eternal souls of people are at stake. And if they die without Christ, their suffering is eternal forever and ever. There's no hope. There's no second chance. But during the tribulation, is the call to follow Jesus worth it? These commands go to all unbelievers, and whoever turns from sin, whoever turns from the beast in his image and turn to Jesus, the question is the call to follow Jesus actually worth it? And the question for you and I today is, during the hardships and struggles of this life, is the call to follow Jesus worth it? The answer is absolutely. Amen. Look at verse 13. It says, I heard a voice from heaven saying, write this, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Blessed indeed, says the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, for their deeds follow them. Those who die in the Lord, this is a reference to all martyrs spanning church history, but also all Christian martyrs who die for their faith in the midst of the tribulation. Those who turned from sin, placed their faith in Jesus during the tribulation, and they die for their service in the Lord. This is referring to all Christian martyrs, but it's also referring to all who are faithful to follow Jesus until the very end today. We can think of grandmas and grandpas. We can think of friends and family, loved ones who have died in their service to the Lord, not by persecution, but who were faithful to the end. They committed themselves to follow Jesus regardless of the cost, regardless of the circumstances of life, and the reward that they received. We can all think of people who are like that. We can all think of grandmas and grandpas and friends and family. Their reward is rest from the toil and struggle of this life, but the reward is also heaven. The eternal destiny of these people is far different than those who do not trust in Jesus.